Well, why the hell are you sitting here all alone? The voice was tiny, but it cut through the playground noise like a razor. 8-year-old Maya Jones stood in front of the splintered wooden bench, her hands planted firmly on her hips. Her hair, a riot of coiled puffs, was tied with mismatched ribbons, and her bright pink sneakers were caked in dust. She was a firecracker, all of 4 feet of unadulterated curiosity, and her dark brown eyes were locked on him. Leo Vance, the 8-year-old heir to the Vance tech fortune, looked up from the ground. His knuckles were white where he clutched the strap of his designer backpack, a leather shield against a world that had already taught him to expect cruelty. He was used to this, the isolation. He knew the mockery that followed questions like hers, the whispers that slithered through the air when he hesitated to speak, the way other kids' eyes would drop to his left leg. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper, almost stolen by the joyful shrieks of children on the nearby monkey bars. They don't want me there. Before we dive into this insane story of courage, betrayal, and a bond that shattered a billion-dollar lie, do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe right now because you will not believe where this goes, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Maya tilted her head, a gesture of genuine confusion. Why not? The answer didn't come from Leo. It came on the back of a wave of cruel, barking laughter. 3 boys from his 3rd grade class, the self-appointed kings of the playground, swaggered toward them. Smirks were practically glued to their faces. The leader, a boy named Kevin with a perpetually sneering lip, held a carton of chocolate milk like a weapon. Well, well, look what we have here, Kevin sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. The Tin Man found himself a friend. He squinted dramatically at Maya, dragging out the insult. And what is... She? He drawled, letting out a laugh that was all sharp edges. Oh, right. A little charity case. Perfect. Another boy chimed in, his voice a venomous echo. The broken toy and the trash. What a pair of goddamn losers. Maya froze, but only for a heartbeat. She'd heard it all before. Her clothes weren't from the boutiques on Newberry Street. Her skin was a richer, deeper brown than most of the kids at this pristine Boston private school. But the way they aimed their poison at Leo, the sheer glee they took in his pain, lit a fuse deep in her chest. That's not funny, she shouted, her voice so sharp the boys actually blinked. She took a step forward, placing herself between them and Leo. You don't get to say that to him. One of the boys, emboldened by the audience, lobbed a wadded-up napkin that hit Leo's chest. Another flicked a greasy crumb from his snack, and it landed on Leo's impeccably clean uniform shirt. Leo hunched his shoulders, his cheeks burning with a familiar, hot shame. He wished the manicured lawn would split open and swallow him whole. Stop it, Maya's voice cracked with emotion, but she didn't budge an inch. You're cowards, all of you. Picking on someone because he's different doesn't make you tough. It just makes you small and ugly. Kevin sneered, taking a menacing step closer. Or what, little girl? You gonna fight all 3 of us? He bent down, scooping up a handful of damp mulch, raising it like a threat. Maya's chin lifted. Her small fists were balled so tight her knuckles were white. Or I'll tell Principal Davison you were throwing food again, and I'll tell my grandma. And you do not want to mess with my grandma. She knows how to make people listen. Her glare was ferocious now, her voice ringing with absolute certainty. And everyone is watching you. Everyone can see exactly how pathetic you are. Around them, the playground had indeed grown quieter. Other children were staring, their games forgotten. The bullies shifted, their bravado leaking away under the weight of dozens of eyes. Whatever, the leader muttered, letting the mulch fall from his hand. This isn't over, Tin Man. He shot a final hateful glance at Leo and slunk away, his cronies trailing behind him. Leo sat paralyzed, the chocolate milk slowly dripping from his shirt onto his pants. Maya turned to him instantly, the fire in her eyes softening to concern. She pulled a crumpled but clean tissue from her pocket and began dabbing at the stain with careful, gentle swipes. "They're just idiots," she said, her voice firm. "Don't you ever let them make you feel small." Leo swallowed against the thick lump in his throat. His chest ached with a humiliating mix of shame and gratitude. But her words, her fierce defense, planted something new inside him, a tiny, fragile seed of warmth. "Why did you do that?" he asked, his voice trembling. Maya shrugged as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Because it was wrong, and because—" She broke into a sudden, brilliant grin, revealing a gap where a tooth used to be. "I think you could be my friend." The school bell shrieked then, a sharp, commanding sound that sent children scrambling toward the ivy-covered brick building. Leo stood up slowly. The joint in his prosthetic knee made a stiff, awkward clicking sound, and he stumbled. Without a single thought, Maya grabbed his arm, her small hand surprisingly strong, steadying him. "There," she said, her smile returning. "Better." For the first time in his entire lonely life, Leo Vance actually believed her. The ride home that afternoon in the back of the gleaming black SUV felt suffocating. Leo stared out the tinted window as Boston's historic brownstones and shimmering skyscrapers blurred into a watercolor wash. The air inside the car smelled of expensive leather and his father's cologne, every surface polished to an intimidating sheen. His father, Julian Vance, was on the phone, his voice a low, commanding rumble of words like mergers and projections. Leo pressed his forehead against the cool glass. Usually this was the time he'd replay the day's torments, the jeers, the laughter, the sting of the spilled milk. But today, a different memory pushed through the noise. Maya, impossibly small, but radiating a strength that dwarfed the bullies, her voice sharp as she called them cowards. No one, not an adult, not another child, had ever done that for him. The memory clung to him, a fragile light in the usual darkness. When the SUV glided through the wrought iron gates of the Vance estate, they closed with a heavy, final thud. The mansion rose from acres of perfectly manicured lawns, a monument of white columns, arched windows, and a fountain that scattered diamonds of light in the afternoon sun. Leo stepped out, the click of his prosthetic leg against the stone driveway echoing in the vast, empty space. It was a sound that always reminded him of the difference he tried so desperately to hide. His stepmother, Isabel, was waiting at the base of the grand, sweeping staircase. Every strand of her honey-blonde hair was in its perfect place. Her smile was wide, but it never quite reached her eyes, as if her face were a beautiful mask pulled too tight. "You're late," she said, her voice like chimes of ice. She brushed a piece of invisible lint from Leo's shoulder. "Did you have another incident?" Her gaze dropped to the faint, damp stain on his shirt. Leo stiffened. "No." She arched a perfectly sculpted brow. "Then why is your uniform filthy? Leo, you know your father expects you to represent this family with dignity." Julian ended his call and placed a heavy hand on Leo's shoulder, though his eyes were already scanning a new email on his phone. "He's fine, Isabel. Let the boy breathe." Isabel's lips tightened into a thin line, but she said nothing more. Instead, she guided Leo toward the cavernous dining room. A long mahogany table stretched into the distance, set for three with glittering crystal and polished silver, even though it was only late afternoon. Candles flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The meal was, as always, meticulously planned. A perfectly cooked steak for Julian, a small salad for Isabel, and for Leo, a precisely measured portion of grilled chicken and steamed asparagus. He picked at his food in a silence so profound he could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. His mind kept replaying Maya's fierce defense. Don't let them make you feel small. His fork slipped, clattering loudly against the china plate. Isabel's eyes flicked up. "Clumsy again?" she murmured, a hint of something sharp beneath the sweet tone. "Perhaps you're overtired. We may need to scale back your physical therapy. Too much strain isn't good for a boy like you." Leo swallowed hard. "I can handle it." Her gaze sharpened. "That's not for you to decide, dear." Julian's phone buzzed again. He excused himself, his footsteps echoing as he left the room. The silence that descended felt colder and heavier than the marble beneath Leo's feet. After dinner, Isabel escorted Leo to his bedroom. It was a vast space, filled with shelves of expensive, untouched toys that any other child would have killed for. To Leo, it felt like a museum exhibit of a happy childhood, beautiful but utterly lifeless. As she tucked him into his king-sized bed, she smoothed the blanket with a clinical, detached precision. "You must be so careful who you associate with, Leo," she said, her voice a soft, silken whisper. "Not everyone belongs in our world." He looked up at her, his heart starting to thump a nervous rhythm against his ribs. "I met a girl today." Isabel's hands stilled on the blanket. "A girl?" "She helped me," he said, the image of Maya wiping the milk from his shirt, her hand steadying his, flashing in his mind. Isabel's expression shifted. For a millisecond, something cold and hard flashed behind her practiced smile. "How sweet," she said slowly. "But you must remember what I've told you. Some children are simply not appropriate company. They don't understand what it means to be a Vance. It's best to keep your distance." Leo wanted to argue. He wanted to scream that Maya understood him more in 5 minutes than Isabel had in 5 years. But the weight of her gaze was like a physical pressure, pinning him to the bed. He turned onto his side, feigning sleep until the soft click of the door told him she was gone. The next morning the chauffeur dropped him off at the edge of the school grounds. Leo's chest tightened as he stepped onto the playground. He scanned the yard, half expecting the bullies to materialize, ready for round 2. He saw them near the basketball court, whispering, their eyes darting in his direction. His stomach twisted into a knot. Then he heard it. "Hey, Leo." Maya waved from the swings, her grin as wide and bright as the morning sun. She ran toward him, her pink backpack bouncing. "I saved us a spot for lunch," she announced, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He stared at her, stunned. You want to sit with me?" "Of course," she said, looking at him as if he'd asked if the sky was blue. "That's what friends do." The word, friends, warmed him from the inside out. He nodded, a small, shy movement, and followed her toward the swings, but the peace was short-lived. At lunchtime, as Leo and Maya carried their trays toward the table she'd saved, Kevin stuck out his foot. Leo stumbled hard, his tray tipping precariously. Milk and juice sloshed onto the floor, splashing his shoes and the hem of his pants. A wave of cruel laughter erupted from the nearby tables. "Watch it, Tin Man," Kevin jeered. "Better let your girlfriend carry your stuff for you." He shot a nasty look at Maya. Not that anyone would want a charity case for a girlfriend. The entire cafeteria seemed to hold its breath. Leo froze, humiliation burning through him like acid. But Maya didn't freeze. She slammed her tray down on the table with a bang that echoed through the room, startling even the lunch monitors. "Shut up!" she shouted, her voice carrying across the silent cafeteria. "You don't get to talk like that. You don't get to make fun of him or me or anyone." The room was dead silent now. Maya stood there, her fists clenched, her small body trembling with a rage that seemed too big for her to contain. "You think you're so funny? You're not. You're just mean, pathetic bullies, and bullies are nothing but scared little cowards." Teachers rushed over, scolding and dragging the stunned boys aside. The moment shattered, but Leo couldn't look away from Maya. She was shaking, but she had stood there, unflinching, while the entire school watched. Later, as the noise of the day began to fade, he sat beside her at their table. His voice was quiet, almost fragile. "Why do you keep helping me?" Maya looked at him, her expression softening. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because you deserve a friend." He stared down at his tray, 1,000 words caught in his throat. All he could manage was a whisper. "I've never had one before." Maya's smile was soft, but certain. "Well, you do now." For Leo Vance, those words felt like the first day of a new life. It was a fragile, terrifying, and powerful beginning. And deep inside, in a place he thought had long since gone numb, he felt the first stirrings of his own courage. The sun had barely kissed the top of the Prudential Tower when Leo's driver pulled the SUV up to the school's imposing gates the next morning. Leo stepped out, the familiar click of his prosthetic a stark announcement of his arrival. As always, he kept his eyes on the ground, a solitary ship in a sea of laughing, shouting children. Then, he heard it again, that bright, clear voice cutting through the noise. "Leo, over here!" Maya was by the sandbox, waving both arms like she was flagging down a plane, a proud grin plastered on her face. A genuine smile touched Leo's lips. He walked toward her, and for the first time, the journey across the playground felt less like walking a gauntlet and more like coming home. Maya patted the spot beside her in the sand. "Sit. I want to see your leg." Leo's smile vanished. He froze, his eyes darting around the yard. I don't think I should." Maya just shrugged, her expression unbothered. "You don't have to. But I noticed it clicks sometimes, and my grandma always says if something sounds wrong, it probably is." She picked up a stick and started drawing patterns in the sand. "You don't have to hide it from me, you know. I'm not scared of it." Her tone wasn't pitying or morbidly curious. It was calm, matter of fact. Leo found himself sitting down beside her, cautiously brushing sand from his uniform. "It hurts," he admitted, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. "Like it's too tight. But they always tell me that's normal." Maya squinted, her brow furrowed in thought. "Normal doesn't mean right." The bell rang, cutting the conversation short, but her words echoed in his head all morning. Normal doesn't mean right. He thought about her serious, determined eyes, and how she spoke about his pain, as if it were a real, solvable problem. That afternoon, as the final bell rang, Maya tugged on his sleeve. "Come on," she whispered, her eyes sparkling with secrets. "I want you to meet someone." Before he could object, she was pulling him down the sidewalk, away from the waiting line of luxury cars and school buses. Her grandmother, Grandma Rose, stood by the far fence, a tall, sturdy woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun and a gaze as steady as the earth. She wore a simple, worn cardigan and held a reusable grocery bag in one hand. "This is my grandma," Maya announced proudly. "She knows stuff." Grandma Rose smiled, and the lines around her eyes deepened with genuine warmth. "And who is this polite young man?" Leo shifted awkwardly. "Leo Vance." Her expression softened with a flicker of recognition. "Vance? Are you Julian Vance's boy?" Leo nodded, the familiar weight of his father's name settling on him. Grandma Rose crouched slightly, bringing herself to his eye level. Her voice was gentle. "Your leg. May I see how it's fitted?" Leo hesitated. Adults didn't ask. They prodded, they adjusted, they told him what was best. But her eyes held only kindness, not pity. Slowly, tentatively, he pulled up his pant leg, revealing the sleek carbon fiber prosthetic. Grandma Rose adjusted her glasses, her weathered hands examining the joint with a practiced, confident touch. She tapped the side, pressed gently along the socket where it met his skin. "This isn't aligned properly," she murmured, her voice low and certain. "And this padding is all wrong. No wonder it hurts you, child." Leo stared, stunned into silence. They had always told him the pain was part of the process, a phantom he just had to live with. Grandma Rose shook her head firmly. "No, baby. Whoever set this up didn't do it with your comfort in mind. It looks like they've been making adjustments that make you depend on it more, not less." She glanced from Maya's determined face back to Leo's shocked one. "You deserve better than this. Can you even imagine having someone in your life who is supposed to love you, but secretly wants you to fail? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had to deal with someone like that." Something inside Leo cracked wide open. For the first time, an adult had validated what he'd felt for years, that the pain wasn't normal, that he wasn't just weak. His chest tightened with a dizzying mix of relief and a new, unfamiliar anger. "I knew it," Maya whispered, her eyes shining. "Told you." A sharp honk from the curb made him flinch. The chauffeur was waiting. I have to go." "Come by our place sometime," Maya said quickly. "Grandma can show you more. We don't have much, but we've got tools." He wanted to scream yes, but the image of Isabel's cold, warning eyes flooded his mind. He shook his head. "I can't." Maya's face fell. "Why not?" His voice broke. "They wouldn't let me." Grandma Rose laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, Leo, the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones who can't see the truth. That doesn't mean the truth isn't there." The driver honked again, more insistent this time. Leo mumbled a hasty goodbye and hurried to the SUV, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt Maya's disappointed eyes on his back the entire way. That evening, the mansion was aglow with warm, welcoming lights, but to Leo, it had never felt colder. At dinner, Isabel studied him with that calculating smile. "You're quieter than usual," she observed. "Did something happen at school?" Leo shook his head, his eyes glued to his plate. "No." Her eyes narrowed. "Did someone bother you? You know you can tell me." He thought of Maya in the cafeteria, fists clenched, a tiny warrior defending him. He thought of Grandma Rose's steady hands and her earth-shattering words. And then he thought of Isabel's voice, dripping with a sweetness that felt like poison. "I'm fine," he whispered. The conversation ended there. That night, alone in his cavernous room, he pulled the blanket up to his chin. The silence of the mansion was a living thing, thick and suffocating. His leg ached, a dull, relentless throb that kept sleep at bay. He pressed his palm against the prosthetic joint, remembering Grandma Rose's words. "It looks like they've been making adjustments that make you depend on it more, not less. Could that possibly be true? And if it was, why? Why would anyone do that to him?" His eyes burned with unshed tears, but beneath the fear and the confusion, a stubborn flicker of something else was taking hold. Maya's voice echoed in the darkness. Normal doesn't mean right. She believed him. She saw him. He whispered into the dark, a promise to himself. "I'll see her again." For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a world where he wasn't just a broken toy. A world where he wasn't alone. The weekend arrived, painting Boston in the brilliant hues of late spring. but Leo felt none of its warmth. He sat at the massive kitchen island, a plate of untouched waffles growing cold in front of him, while Isabel, wrapped in a silk robe, idly flipped through a fashion magazine. "Eat up, darling," she cooed without looking up. "You need your strength." Her tone was a confection of sweetness, but the words carried a bitter aftertaste. Leo pushed a waffle square around his plate. His leg throbbed, the prosthetic rubbing a raw, angry spot against his skin. Grandma Rose's words were a relentless echo in his mind. "It's not aligned properly. No wonder it hurts." Julian breezed in, already dressed in a tailored weekend suit. "Big meeting downtown," he announced, pressing a distracted, fleeting kiss to the top of Leo's head. "We'll talk later, champ." And then he was gone, the heavy front door clicking shut behind him. Isabel set down her magazine, her gaze finally fixing on Leo, sharp and pointed. "I saw you lingering by the fence after school on Friday," she said, her voice deceptively casual. Leo's stomach plunged. "With that little girl, Maya, is it? And her grandmother?" He struggled to keep his own voice even. "They were just being nice." Isabel's smile was a masterpiece of polished condescension. "People like that, Leo, they don't understand our world. They don't belong in it. You can't afford such distractions. Your friendships should be appropriate." He wanted to scream that Maya and her grandmother were more real and more kind than anyone in their glittering, empty world. But the words were trapped behind a wall of fear. He lowered his head and mumbled, "Yes, Isabel." Later that day, seizing a moment while Isabel was on a long phone call, Leo slipped out into the garden. The fountain gurgled, and birds sang from perfectly sculpted hedges, but it was all just a beautiful, sterile cage. He thought of Maya's fearless defiance and the gentle, certain way her grandmother's hands had examined his leg. They had seen him. For a few precious minutes, he wasn't the Vance heir or a fragile liability. He was just Leo. By Sunday afternoon, a desperate resolve had hardened in his chest. He asked the chauffeur to drop him off a block away from a small public park, pretending he wanted to walk. The driver, following standing orders to indulge Leo's minor whims, agreed without question. From the park, Leo walked. The trailer park was another universe entirely. Gravel crunched under his expensive shoes, laundry lines sagged with colorful clothes, and the air was thick with the scent of grilling burgers and life. Children with scraped knees laughed as they rode dented bicycles. He hesitated at the entrance, suddenly hyper-aware of his pristine uniform and the telltale click of his leg. Then he heard her voice, a beacon in the unfamiliar territory. "Leo." Maya came running, a streak of purple chalk on her cheek, her grin lighting up the entire afternoon. "You came!" She grabbed his hand, her touch warm and sure, and pulled him toward a small, tidy trailer painted a cheerful shade of pale blue. "Grandma, he's here!" Grandma Rose appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Well, I'll be," she said, her smile genuine. "Welcome, Leo. Come on in." The inside was small, but felt more like a home than his entire mansion. The air smelled of cornbread and something savory. Walls were lined with framed photos of smiling faces, graduations, birthdays, a tapestry of real, lived-in memories. Leo stared. His own house had portraits, but they were formal, stiff, more like corporate headshots than memories. "Sit down, honey," Grandma Rose said gently. "Let's have another look at that leg." Leo perched on the edge of the floral print sofa as she knelt, and began her examination. Maya appeared at his side, offering him a can of soda with a crooked straw. "Here," she said. "It's the good kind, cold from the freezer." Grandma Rose's touch was firm and knowledgeable as she adjusted the socket. "This padding is all wrong," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "It's forcing your muscles to work against the device, not with it. That's why you're always in pain." She looked up at him, her eyes sharp. "When was the last time this was properly fitted?" Leo shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. Isabel says it's fine." Grandma Rose's eyes narrowed. "Well, Isabel isn't the one walking on it, is she?" "Grandma can fix it a little," Maya piped up. "She fixes my bike all the time." Grandma Rose chuckled. "Bikes and prosthetics aren't quite the same thing, baby girl, but I can make some small adjustments that might give him some relief until we can find someone who will do it right." She disappeared into a back room and returned with a small, neat toolbox. With careful, precise movements, she loosened a joint, shifted the worn padding, and tightened a few screws. When Leo stood up, the difference was instantaneous. The rigid stiffness was gone. The sharp, biting pain had dulled to a distant ache. He took a cautious step, then another. Maya clapped her hands. "See? Better!" For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Leo smiled. A real, unburdened smile. "It really is." The moment was shattered by the deep rumble of a familiar engine. Tires crunched on the gravel outside. Leo's heart seized. Through the thin curtains he saw the sleek black SUV. Isabel stepped out, her high heels clicking on the pavement, her eyes like chips of ice. "Leo!" Her voice sliced through the trailer walls. "What are you doing here?" He froze. Maya instinctively squeezed his hand. Grandma Rose straightened up, her jaw set in a firm line. Isabel swept into the trailer without an invitation, her gaze flicking around the modest space, her nose wrinkling slightly. Her eyes landed on Leo. "Get your things. We are leaving." Leo's throat was tight, but they were helping me. Isabel's smile was thin and cold. "Helping you?" "Leo, darling, these people can't possibly help you. They don't understand your needs. Your father has arranged for the very best specialists money can buy. You do not belong here." Maya stepped forward, a tiny, unyielding warrior. "He belongs wherever he wants to be," she said fiercely. Isabel's eyes narrowed into slits. "Stay out of this, little girl." She reached for Leo's arm, but Grandma Rose intercepted her, her voice calm but immovable. "With all due respect, ma'am, the boy is in pain. I've seen the fittings. Something is not right." Isabel's mask of composure cracked. Pure, unadulterated anger flashed across her face before she contained it. She tightened her grip on Leo's arm. "We will discuss this at home." Leo looked back at Maya, at her eyes blazing with righteous loyalty. He wanted to stay. He wanted to shout that they were right, and she was wrong. But years of ingrained fear and obedience clamped down on his chest. He lowered his head and allowed himself to be led away. The ride back was a tomb of silence, the air thick with Isabel's cloying perfume. Finally she spoke, her voice like velvet wrapped around shards of glass. "You will not go back there, Leo. Do you understand me? Those people are not your friends. They are beneath you." He stared at his hands, fighting back hot tears. But Maya's words echoed in his mind. He belongs wherever he wants to be. And for the very first time he wondered if maybe, just maybe, Isabel was the one who was lying. The next morning, Leo woke with a dull ache in his leg and a leaden knot in his stomach. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his bedroom, glinting off the polished surfaces of toys he never played with. Isabel's parting words from the night before were a venomous whisper in his mind. "You will not go back there." He pulled his knees to his chest and whispered into the cavernous silence of his room. "But they were helping me." At breakfast, the dining room was a symphony of crystal, silver, and the aroma of fresh coffee. Julian sat at the head of the table, his attention already captured by his tablet. Isabel poured juice into Leo's glass, her smile as thin and practiced as a wire. "We'll have an adjustment scheduled for you this week," she said smoothly, as if nothing had happened. "Dr. Reynolds will look at the prosthetic again. He's the best in the state." Leo shifted in his seat. "It doesn't feel right. Grandma Rose said—" Isabel's hand froze for a fraction of a second, her butter knife poised mid-air. Then she set it down with an exaggerated, deliberate calm. "Grandma Rose is not a doctor, Leo. She is a stranger. You will not listen to her." Julian glanced up from his tablet, his brow furrowed. "Who's Grandma Rose?" "No one important," Isabel answered quickly, her tone dismissing the very idea. "Just someone who shouldn't be interfering." Leo swallowed hard, his hope deflating. His father's eyes held a flicker of concern, but then his tablet buzzed, and the moment was lost. Julian was gone again, absorbed back into his world of high-stakes business. Isabel leaned closer, her voice a low, sharp hiss meant only for him. "If you mention them again, you will lose what little freedom you have left. Do you understand me?" Leo's fork trembled in his hand. He nodded, though every fiber of his being screamed in protest. At school, the playground felt like a minefield. The bullies still hovered near the swings, their whispers like the buzzing of angry hornets. But they kept their distance. Maya's public defiance had clearly rattled them. Leo walked carefully, each step a bittersweet reminder of the brief relief Grandma Rose's adjustments had provided. Maya found him by the slide, her energy a bright contrast to the gray mood that clung to him. "Hey, did it still feel better after yesterday?" Leo glanced around nervously, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm not supposed to talk to you." Maya blinked, then scowled. "Who said?" "Isabel. She doesn't want me to see you or your grandma anymore." Maya crossed her arms, her small face a thundercloud of indignation. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. She doesn't get to tell you who your friends are." He wanted to believe her, but the fear was a cold, heavy thing in his gut. She's scary when she's mad." Maya's expression softened. She reached into the pocket of her worn denim jacket and pulled out a small object. It was a tiny, toy wrench, its red paint chipped and scratched from years of play. She pressed it firmly into his hand. "Keep this," she said. "When you hold it, remember you're not alone. Even if she yells, even if it's scary, you've got me." Leo's throat tightened. He curled his fingers around the small, solid piece of plastic. It felt like an anchor. "Thank you," he whispered. That afternoon, Maya invited him to sit with her at lunch again. She pulled out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich wrapped in wax paper and, without a word, tore it in half and offered him a piece. "Grandma says food tastes better when you share it." Leo hesitated. At his house, meals were plated, measured, and controlled. No one ever shared. He took the sandwich. It was simple, a little squished, and absolutely perfect. For a few minutes, they just talked about normal things: dogs, cartoons, what they wanted to be when they grew up. Maya declared she wanted to be an inventor. "I'm going to build machines that fix things people say can't be fixed," she said proudly. "Like your leg." Leo smiled, a real smile. "Maybe I could help." Her eyes lit up. "See? We'd make a great team." After school, as Leo waited for the SUV, Maya and Grandma Rose approached. Isabel's car hadn't arrived yet, and the air felt momentarily safe. Grandma Rose crouched down to his level. "I've been thinking, sweetheart. If you let me, I can show you how to walk stronger. Not just with adjustments, but with exercises. Your muscles need the right kind of training, not more restrictions. Leo nodded eagerly, but his hope was immediately chased by fear. Isabel won't let me. Grandma Rose's hand rested gently on his shoulder. You have more say in your own life than you think, Leo. Don't you ever forget that. The black SUV pulled up then, and Isabel stepped out, her heels clicking like tiny hammers on the pavement. Her eyes narrowed into icy slits when she saw them. Boom. I thought I made myself perfectly clear, she said, her voice dangerously soft. Maya stepped in front of Leo, a small, fierce shield. He was just talking to us. He's our friend. Isabel's smile sharpened like a shard of glass. Friendship is not what he needs. What he needs is discipline. She gripped Leo's arm, her fingers digging into his skin, and steered him toward the car. Inside the SUV, Leo clutched the toy wrench in his pocket. Isabel's voice was a venomous whisper. You will not disobey me again. Those people are beneath you. They do not know what is best for you. But as the city blurred past the tinted window, Leo held the wrench tighter. For the first time, a spark of defiance flickered to life within him. He whispered so softly she couldn't possibly hear. They do know what's best for me. Better than you. That night, in the sterile safety of his room, he replayed the day in his mind. Maya's fierce loyalty, Grandma Rose's calm certainty, the taste of a shared sandwich. He tucked the toy wrench under his pillow like a sacred promise. Isabel could control his schedule, his therapy, even his food. But she could not control the truth he now carried inside him. The truth that friendship was real, the truth that his pain was not normal, and the truth that someone, somewhere, finally believed in him. As sleep finally came, he dreamed of a future that wasn't defined by marble walls or polished floors, a future where Maya and her grandmother helped him walk without pain, where the bullies' voices were nothing but distant echoes, and where Isabel's power no longer held him captive. It was just a dream for now, fragile and far away. But it was his. And for the first time, Leo Vance dared to dream of freedom. Sunday afternoons at the Vance mansion were exercises in pristine silence. Housekeepers polished floors until they reflected the sky, and gardeners sculpted hedges into flawless geometric shapes. But Leo sat on the back veranda, the cold stone seeping through his pants, and stared at the dancing fountain with a hollow ache in his chest. The water was free, but his own body felt like a prisoner of gears and screws. He fingered the little toy wrench in his pocket, a secret source of strength. That evening, Julian finally emerged from his endless cycle of meetings. He sat in his cavernous study, papers spread across the massive desk like a battlefield map. Leo stood in the doorway, a small, hesitant figure. Dad? Julian looked up, a faint, tired smile on his face. Hey, champ, come on in. Leo shuffled forward, the click of his prosthetic a loud intrusion in the quiet room. I wanted to tell you something. About school. Julian leaned back, actually setting his papers aside. Go on. I met a girl, Maya, and her grandma. They helped me with my leg. Her grandma said it wasn't fitted right, and when she fixed it, just a little, it felt better. I could walk better. The words tumbled out, a desperate, hopeful torrent. Julian's brow furrowed. Really? That's interesting. Did she say what was wrong? She said the padding was wrong and the screws were too tight. She said it wasn't supposed to hurt this much. Before Julian could respond, the study door swung open. Isabel glided in, her heels silent on the thick Persian rug. Julian, darling, don't listen to this nonsense, she said smoothly. He's been spending time with that child from the trailer park. They're filling his head with foolish, dangerous ideas. Julian turned to her, a frown creasing his forehead. Isabel, He says he feels better. We can't just ignore that." Her smile tightened. "These are amateurs, Julian. Do you really want to risk our son's health on the opinions of strangers?" Leo's chest clenched. He wanted to scream, to beg his father to listen to him, but Julian just sighed, rubbing his temples wearily. "We'll look into it," he said vaguely, his hand already inching back toward his papers. The conversation was over. Isabel's eyes glinted with triumph. She placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, her fingers squeezing just a little too hard. "See? Nothing to worry about. Now run along to bed." That night, Leo lay awake, staring at the ornate patterns on his ceiling. His father's promise had been a puff of smoke, dissolving before it was even spoken. But Maya's voice was a steady echo in his mind. Normal doesn't mean right. He turned on his side, clutching the wrench. "I'll find a way," he whispered into the darkness. The next day at school, Maya was waiting. "Well?" she asked. "Did you tell him?" Leo nodded glumly. He listened, but Isabel stopped him. She always stops him. Maya scowled, crossing her arms. "She doesn't want you to get better?" Leo flinched. "Why wouldn't she want that?" Maya shrugged, but her eyes were wise beyond her years. "Some people like to be in control. If you're hurting, you need her. If you're strong, you don't." Her words landed with a heavy, chilling thud in his chest. He hadn't wanted to believe it, but deep down, he knew she was right. Isabel liked him weak. Isabel needed him dependent. At recess, the bullies made another half-hearted attempt. "Look, it's the broken toy and his bodyguard," one of them muttered, tossing a wad of paper in his direction. This time Leo barely reacted. Their words felt flimsy and distant compared to the heavy truth that was dawning inside him. Maya was right. That afternoon, she pulled him toward the fence again. "Grandma says you should come by after school. She can show you those exercises." Leo's heart hammered. He glanced at the SUV waiting at the curb. "What if Isabel finds out?" "Then we'll be quick," Maya said firmly. 5 minutes, that's all." Before he could lose his nerve, he slipped through the school gate with her. They hurried down the block to the little blue trailer. Miss Brooks greeted them with a knowing smile. "I figured you'd be back," she said. She cleared a space on the faded living room rug. "Now, let's start simple." She showed him how to shift his weight, how to balance, how to stretch muscles he hadn't realized were tight with strain. Maya demonstrated alongside him, giggling when she wobbled. It was hard, and sweat beaded on his forehead, but when he managed 3 steady, balanced steps across the rug, Miss Brooks clapped her hands. "That's it, sweetheart. You've got more strength in you than they've been letting you use." Leo's chest swelled with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Pride. He glanced at Maya, who was beaming. "See? Told you." The moment was shattered by the sound of tires on gravel. The SUV. Isabel's sharp voice pierced the air. "Leo!" He froze, pure panic surging through him. Miss Brooks placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Don't be afraid, child. You've done nothing wrong." The door flew open. Isabel's eyes blazed. "Enough of this," she snapped. "I told you to stay away from them." Leo's hands trembled. Maya stepped in front of him again, a tiny, defiant shield. "He's allowed to walk better. Why don't you want that for him?" Isabel's face twisted, but she quickly smoothed it back into her practiced smile. "You don't understand," she said sweetly. "It's dangerous for him to be experimenting. He needs proper professional care." Miss Brooks straightened to her full height, her voice calm but unwavering. "Proper care doesn't mean leaving a child in constant pain. I've worked with enough patients in my day to know when something is deliberately wrong." Isabel's mask flickered. She grabbed Leo's arm, pulling him toward the door. "We are leaving." This time, something inside Leo resisted. He pulled back, his voice shaking but clear. "I want to stay. They're helping me." Isabel's grip tightened, her nails digging into his skin. "Don't you dare defy me!" Silence filled the trailer, thick and electric. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. Maya's small hand found his, squeezing lightly. He drew strength from it. Then, a new voice cut through the tension from the doorway. "Isabel? What's going on here?" Everyone froze. Julian Vance stood there, his face a mask of confusion. His eyes flicked from Leo's flushed cheeks to Isabel's iron grip, then to Grandma Rose, standing tall and resolute. Isabel's smile snapped back into place instantly. "Julian, darling, I was just collecting Leo. He wandered off again." But Julian's gaze was fixed on his son. "Is that true, Leo?" His voice was gentle. This was it. This was his chance. He could tell the truth. He could finally be heard. His fingers tightened around the toy wrench in his pocket. He looked up at his father, his voice trembling but steady. "No, I came here because they're helping me. My leg feels better when they fix it, and I don't want to stop." Isabel's smile faltered. Julian's eyes darkened as he looked from his son to his wife. And in that moment, Leo knew. The fight for the truth had finally truly begun. Monday morning was gray and heavy, as if the sky itself was weighed down with secrets. In the back seat of the SUV, Leo's fingers were wrapped tightly around the toy wrench. The confrontation at the trailer replayed in his mind. Isabel's fury, Grandma Rose's calm defiance, and his father's searching eyes. For the first time, he had spoken up, and for the first time, Julian had looked at him not as a fragile problem, but as someone telling the truth. That flicker of belief was a fragile shield against the dread of the day ahead. At school, Maya ran up to him, her braids swinging. "You did it," she whispered excitedly. "You told your dad, didn't you?" Leo nodded, a shy smile touching his lips. "I think he believed me. A little." "A little is huge," she said with certainty. "Grown-ups don't usually listen, but he will if you keep telling him the truth." In class, he found himself raising his hand. The teacher looked surprised when he answered correctly, as if she'd never expected much from him. At lunch, he and Maya shared a sandwich in their corner, and each bite tasted like a small victory. But when the final bell rang, the familiar dread returned. The SUV was idling at the curb, Isabel's silhouette a dark shape behind the tinted glass. The silence on the drive home was a weapon. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold enough to freeze water. "You embarrassed me yesterday, Leo, in front of your father. You will not repeat that mistake." He stared at his hands clasped in his lap. "It wasn't a mistake. I was telling the truth." Her eyes, sharp and angry, met his in the rear-view mirror. The truth is what I decide it is. And you will learn that." When they reached the mansion, Julian was in the study. Leo hesitated, then stepped inside. "Dad, can I talk to you?" Julian set aside his tablet, a new curiosity in his eyes. "Of course." Isabel appeared almost instantly, a phantom in the doorway, her smile nailed in place. "Julian, don't indulge this. He's confused." Leo cut her off, his small voice shaking but firm. "I'm not confused. My leg isn't right. Grandma Rose fixed it even a little and it felt better. Why won't you listen?" Julian's gaze sharpened, flicking between his distraught son and his rigid wife. "Isabel, is there a reason we haven't sought a second opinion on this?" Her mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. "Because we already have the best specialists," she said quickly. "Anything else would be a waste of time and would risk his health." Leo's fists clenched at his sides. It hurts every single day. Shouldn't the best doctors make it stop hurting? Julian's face softened with a pained concern. He has a point, Isabel. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against the desk. I'll schedule an independent evaluation. Quietly, Isabel's smile froze on her face. Julian, it's decided, he said firmly. For the first time, Leo felt the tectonic plates of power shift in his own home. The ground was no longer entirely controlled by Isabel. That night, he dreamed of running. Not the clumsy, stumbling gait he knew, but real running, free and painless, across an endless field of green grass. Anna ran beside him, her laughter echoing in the clear air. The next day, at recess, the bullies tried again, circling like lazy vultures. Your girlfriend fixing your robot leg? One sneered. What's next? She gonna build you a whole new body? But before Leo could shrink away, Anna stepped forward. At least he's brave enough to keep walking every day. You wouldn't last 5 minutes in his shoes. The boys faltered, unsure how to respond. A quiet boldness rose in Leo. She's right, he said, his voice surprisingly clear. You wouldn't. The look of stunned silence on their faces was worth every painful click his prosthetic had ever made. They backed off, muttering, their power unraveling in the face of his newfound voice. After school, Julian surprised him by arriving in person to pick him up. He crouched to Leo's level on the sidewalk, his expression serious. We're going to see a different doctor tomorrow. Just you and me. Don't tell Isabel yet. Leo's heart leaped. Really? Really, Julian said. If something's wrong, we're going to fix it. That night, as Isabel tucked him in, her smile was too wide, too sharp. Remember what I said, Leo, she whispered, a veiled threat in her sweet tone. You need me. Don't ever forget that. But under the blanket, Leo's hand found the toy wrench. He held it tight, thinking of Maya's steady eyes and Grandma Rose's gentle hands. And for the first time he knew Isabel's words weren't true. He didn't need her brand of protection. What he needed was courage. And now, at last, he was starting to find it. Tuesday morning was bright and clear, but Leo's stomach was a tangled mess of nerves. Isabel had left early for a charity brunch, leaving the mansion blessedly free of her oppressive presence. Julian appeared in Leo's doorway, dressed in a casual blazer instead of his usual power suit. Ready, champ? He asked, his voice softer than Leo had heard in years. Leo nodded, his heart thumping a frantic rhythm. This was it. The secret appointment. The SUV merged into the bustling Boston traffic, and Leo stared out the window, clutching the toy wrench in his pocket like a sacred relic. Normal doesn't mean right, he whispered to himself, Maya's words becoming his mantra. Julian reached over and gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. You don't have to be nervous. We're just getting another opinion. Will Isabel be mad? Leo asked quietly. Julian paused. Isabel cares in her own way, but sometimes caring can look a lot like controlling. This is about you, not her. You deserve to feel better. They arrived at a modest medical building near the university, a world away from the glossy, impersonal clinics Isabel favored. Inside, they met Dr. Patel, a prosthetic specialist with kind, steady eyes. She knelt to get on Leo's level. Hi, Leo. I hear you've been very brave. Leo blinked, unused to being spoken to like a person instead of a project. My leg hurts, he admitted. It's always tight, and it clicks too much. Dr. Patel nodded. Let's take a look together. She examined the prosthetic with a focused intensity, checking every angle, every piece of padding, every screw. She frowned slightly. This doesn't look right, she said, her voice laced with professional concern. In fact, it looks deliberately misaligned. Julian stiffened. Deliberately? Yes, she said carefully. The padding is uneven, forcing pressure where it shouldn't be. The joint screws are tightened incorrectly. These aren't the kinds of mistakes a top-tier specialist would make by accident. Leo's heart raced. He looked at his father, his eyes pleading for him to believe. That's what Grandma Rose said, he whispered. Julian's jaw tightened into a hard line. And she was right. Dr. Patel made a few small adjustments, replacing the worn padding. This is just temporary, she explained, but he should feel some immediate relief. When Leo stood and took a cautious step, he gasped. The sharp, biting ache that had been his constant companion for years was suddenly softer, almost gone. He walked across the small room, his face lighting up with a disbelieving joy. It doesn't hurt as much. Julian's eyes shone with a mixture of pride and simmering rage. You're incredible, son, he turned to Dr. Patel. What would be the reason for this kind of setup? Dr. Patel hesitated. It's hard to say for sure, but sometimes there are financial incentives for frequent, costly adjustments and replacements. The more dependent the patient, the more profitable the case. The words hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Marcus's face darkened. He thanked the doctor, promised to schedule a full evaluation, and led Leo back to the car. As the SUV pulled away, Julian stared out the window, his fists clenched in his lap. Someone has been lying to us, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. And I'm going to find out who. At school that afternoon, Leo ran to find Maya, his steps steadier than they had been in years. It worked, he exclaimed. The doctor said you and your grandma were right all along. Maya's grin nearly split her face. I knew it! See? Grown-ups don't always know everything. Sometimes kids do. But their celebration was cut short by a familiar shadow. Kevin, the lead bully, sneered. What are you so happy about, Tin Man? Did your little girlfriend fix you up with some duct tape? He snorted. A broken toy and a poor girl. Perfect match. Leo's chest tightened with the old, familiar shame. But this time, something else rose with it. Anger. He stepped forward, his voice trembling but strong. She already fixed more than you ever could, and she's braver than you'll ever be. The bully faltered, stunned by Leo's sudden backbone. Other kids nearby stopped to watch, their whispers a rising tide. Maya beamed with pride. You heard him, she said. Now back off. A teacher's whistle cut through the tension, and the bully slunk away. That night at dinner, Isabel studied Leo with narrowed eyes. You seem different today, she said coolly. Leo met her gaze, a new fire burning in his chest. That's because I am. Julian looked between them, a silent storm gathering in his eyes. He cleared his throat. Isabel, we need to talk, privately. Her smile faltered, but she rose with practiced grace. Of course, dear. As she left, Leo sat in silence, his fingers wrapped around the toy wrench under the table. He held it tight, feeling the weight of Maya's courage, Grandma Rose's wisdom, and his father's dawning belief. For the first time, he felt the balance of power tipping. The lies were starting to crack. And in the quiet of his room later that night, he whispered into the dark. She won't win. Not this time. He closed his eyes, and the dream of running returned to him, brighter and closer than ever before. The next morning, the sky over Boston was a brilliant, cloudless blue. Leo walked into school with his shoulders back, his stride more confident. The adjustments Dr. Patel had made were holding, and each step felt lighter, freer. For the first time, he didn't dread the long walk from the gate to the classroom. Maya ran to meet him, her eyes wide. You're walking better, she shouted. See? I told you it wasn't supposed to hurt! He couldn't stop smiling. It really doesn't. Not like before. My dad saw it too. He believes me now. Well, that's because you had the best team, she said, puffing out her chest dramatically. Me and Grandma, and you, she added, her voice softening. You spoke up. That's the bravest part. Their moment was cut short by the approach of Kevin and his cronies. Look who thinks he can walk now, Kevin jeered. The robot boy and his little maid. He smirked at Maya. Bet you polished his leg for him this morning, huh? The other boys snickered. Maya planted her hands on her hips. You need to stop, she said, her voice sharp enough to draw attention from other kids. But Kevin wasn't done. He bent down, scooped up a fistful of wet, dark mulch from a flower bed, and with a cruel, deliberate motion, hurled it at Leo. The clump of dirt splattered across the front of Leo's clean white shirt, a dark, ugly stain. A collective gasp, followed by nervous laughter, rippled through the crowd. Leo froze, the familiar hot humiliation washing over him. He wanted to curl up and disappear. But before he could, Maya leaped in front of him, her arms spread wide like a shield. Enough, she yelled, her voice trembling with pure fury. You're nothing but bullies. Everyone can see it. You're protecting him because he's broken, Kevin sneered. And you're just some poor black girl. Nobody cares what you have to say. The words, ugly and sharp, cut through the air. The playground fell silent. Leo's stomach twisted. He looked at Maya, expecting to see her falter. But she didn't. Her chin rose higher, her small fists clenched. Maybe I am poor, and maybe I am black, she said, her voice ringing with a strength that defied her size. But at least I'm not cruel. At least I'm not a coward. The crowd gasped again. Kevin's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. For the first time, Leo felt an answering fire ignite in his own chest. He stepped up beside Maya, his voice shaking but steady. She's right. You couldn't handle what I go through every single day. You think hurting people makes you strong, but it just makes you weak. The crowd erupted in whispers. A teacher's whistle pierced the tension, and the bullies slunk away, their shoulders hunched in defeat. Leo's shirt was stained, but his heart raced with a fierce, unfamiliar pride. He hadn't just spoken up for himself. He had spoken up for Maya, too. She turned to him, her grin blazing. That was amazing. You told him off? He flushed, but he smiled back. I couldn't let him talk about you like that. At lunch, she offered him half of her peanut butter sandwich. You know, she said between bites, people like him only win if you stay quiet. You didn't stay quiet today. That means you're winning. On the ride home, Isabel studied the stains on his shirt, her eyes narrowing. What happened? Nothing, he said quickly. Don't lie to me, she snapped. Did that girl have something to do with this? He hesitated, then shook his head. No, the bullies did. She leaned back, her smile cold. Bullies exist, Leo. You'd better get used to it. Not everyone is going to protect you. But he thought of Maya, standing in front of him, her voice ringing across the playground. At least I'm not a coward. He met Isabel's cold gaze, and for the first time, he didn't flinch. I don't need everyone to protect me, he said softly. Just one real friend is enough. Her smile wavered, just for a second. That night, Julian stopped by his room. He sat on the edge of the bed, studying his son. You've been different lately, he said. Stronger. What's changed? Leo pulled the toy wrench from under his pillow. I have a friend, he said simply. She believes in me. That makes me strong. Julian's eyes softened. He ruffled Leo's hair, an old, forgotten gesture of affection. I'm glad you found that. Everyone deserves at least one person who believes in them. When the lights went out, Leo lay awake, his hand wrapped around the wrench. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel broken or alone. The bully's words still stung, but Maya's courage echoed louder. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but now he knew he had the strength to walk it. Julian Vance had built a global tech empire on data, precision, and cold, hard facts. But lately, the facts of his own life were refusing to add up. After Dr. Patel's evaluation, a gnawing suspicion had taken root in his gut. He had a private lab run a full toxicology screen on a sample of Leo's hair. Late one night, sitting alone in his glass-walled office overlooking the city, he read the results. Traces of a low-grade, long-acting sedative, a drug that should never, ever have been in his son's system. The truth pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. Someone was deliberately weakening his boy. The next morning, Julian drove Leo to school himself. "Does this mean you'll pick me up too?" Leo asked, his voice full of hope. Julian managed a faint smile. "If I can, champ." He watched Leo walk into the school, his small frame looking stronger than it had in years. He gripped the steering wheel, wrestling with the ugly truth. Isabel had managed all of Leo's treatments. The conclusion was unavoidable, and it made him sick to his stomach. At recess, Leo and Maya shared a bag of chips under the oak tree. "So," Maya said through a mouthful, "what did your dad say about the doctor?" Leo's face brightened. "He believes me now. He's getting more tests. And he said not to tell Isabel yet." Maya's grin widened. "That's huge. If your dad's on your side, then things are really going to change." "I know," Leo said, a shadow crossing his face. "But Isabel is scary when she's angry. She told me the truth is whatever she decides it is." Maya's brow furrowed. "That's not true. The truth is the truth. And now you've got proof." Later that afternoon, Julian returned home early and went straight to Isabel. She was in the sunroom, sipping tea, a picture of serene elegance. "Isabel," he said, his voice dangerously even. "Why are there sedatives in our son's system?" Her hand paused, the teacup hovering mid-air, though her smile never faltered. "Sedatives? Darling, that must be a mistake. You know how unreliable some of those labs can be." Julian's jaw tightened. "I've had the results triple-checked. This wasn't a mistake." She set the cup down with a delicate click. "Julian, you've been under so much stress. Perhaps you're seeing problems where there are none. Leo's condition has always required careful management." "Careful management doesn't mean drugging him," Julian snapped. Her eyes flashed with a carefully controlled fire. "How dare you accuse me? Everything I have ever done has been for Leo, for his safety. You're the one who's always too busy to notice when he's suffering." The words were a poisoned dart, and they hit their mark, but Julian didn't flinch. "I may have been absent, but I'm here now, and I will not let anyone hurt my son." She stood, her voice a low, venomous hiss. "You think you can just swoop in and take control? You will regret undermining me, Julian." He held her gaze. "The only one who will have any regrets is the person who put my boy in pain." That night, Leo overheard their raised voices from the hallway, his ear pressed against the cool wood of the door. The words sedatives and lying and betrayal floated through the air. He trembled, not just with fear, but with a profound, earth-shaking relief. His father knew. He wasn't alone in this fight anymore. The next day, Julian took him back to Dr. Patel for a more extensive evaluation. Every test, every scan painted the same damning picture. The prosthetic had been deliberately mismanaged, and his body systemically weakened. When they left, Julian looked down at his son, his face a grim mask of resolve. "This ends now," he said firmly. "No more secrets." "What about Isabel?" Leo whispered. Julian's expression hardened. "If she is behind this, she will not be in our house for much longer." That evening, The Vance mansion glowed, a beacon of wealth and prestige. But inside, the atmosphere was as brittle as spun glass. The three of them sat at the long dining table, a chasm of silence between them. Finally, Julian broke it. "Isabel, I want an explanation. Dr. Patel confirmed the prosthetic was deliberately misaligned, and the lab confirmed the sedatives. I want to know why." The knife clattered against her plate. "I don't know what kind of charlatan this Patel woman is, but she's wrong. The specialists you hired agreed with me. Did they?" Julian's voice was dangerously quiet. "Or did you just ensure they told me what you wanted me to hear?" Leo sat frozen, his heart thudding. Isabel leaned forward, her voice an icy whisper. "You're accusing me of sabotaging your son? Julian, this is outrageous." "I'm accusing you of betrayal," he countered. "Were you being paid by the medical suppliers? Was it about greed? Or was it just about control?" Her smile returned, cold and sharp. "Careful, Julian. You don't want to tear this family apart based on a child's complaints and the word of some woman from a trailer park." Leo's chest tightened. He pushed his chair back, his small voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "It's not just her. I felt it every day. It hurt. And now I know it wasn't supposed to. You lied to me." The words landed like stones. Julian looked from his son's defiant face to his wife's crumbling composure. "Enough lies, Isabel," he said. "It's over." Her face trembled with a rage she could no longer contain. "You will regret this, Julian. Both of you." She rose from the table, her heels striking sharp, angry clicks on the marble floor as she stormed away. Leo's appetite was gone. He whispered, "She hates me." Julian reached across the table, his hand covering his son's. "No, Leo, she hates the truth. And the truth is finally on our side." The next morning, the mansion felt like a different house. The air was lighter, the sunlight brighter. Isabel had left a short, clipped note on the counter. "You've made your choice. Don't expect me to stay and watch you ruin him." Marcus read it and crumpled it in his fist. "She'll be back," he muttered. "Not because she cares, but because she hates to lose. We need to be ready." That afternoon, he picked Leo up from school and took him to a quiet cafe downtown. "Eli, I need you to tell me everything," he said, his voice low and serious. "Every time you felt dizzy, every time something didn't feel right. Don't leave anything out." Leo swallowed, and then he began. He told his father everything. The constant pain, the strange taste in his nighttime drinks, the way Isabel had brushed off every complaint. He confessed his fear, his shame, his loneliness. Julian listened, his jaw tightening with each word. When Leo finished, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek, Julian pulled him into a strong, steady hug. "You've been so brave, son. Braver than I ever realized. I should have seen it sooner. I promise you, I see it now." Leo's throat burned. "I just wanted someone to believe me." Julian held him tighter. "I believe you, and I will never ever doubt you again." That night, lying in bed, Leo clutched the toy wrench. He whispered Maya's words into the darkness. That means she's losing. For the first time, he truly believed it. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was fighting back, and this time, he wasn't fighting alone. The week after the final custody hearing felt like waking from a long, terrible nightmare. For the first time in years, Leo woke up without the familiar dread coiling in his stomach. Vivian was gone, her presence erased from the house, and in her place, a quiet, gentle peace had begun to settle. At school, the change was palpable. Anna noticed it immediately. "You're walking lighter," she said one morning, her head tilted as she studied him. Leo grinned. "Dr. Patel is making me a new prosthetic. She said it'll fit better like it's really part of me." Anna's eyes widened. That's amazing. You'll be running circles around everyone. Maybe not circles, he said shyly. But I want to try running. Just once. I've only ever dreamed about it. Anna nudged him playfully. Then we'll make it happen. I'll run with you. The bullies still lingered at the edges of the playground, but their power had evaporated. One afternoon, Kevin muttered as Leo passed. Think you're a hero now, robot boy? Just wait, you'll mess up again. Leo paused. His chest tightened, but instead of shrinking, he turned to face him. Maybe I will mess up, he said, his voice steady. But I'll get back up, and I'll still be stronger than you. Kevin blinked, caught off guard. For the first time, he had no response. Anna clapped softly as they walked away. You're unstoppable now, she whispered. That evening, Julian surprised Leo with a trip to Dr. Patel's workshop. On a table sat a sleek, lightweight prosthetic, custom-built just for him. With Dr. Patel's guidance, Leo slipped it on. The fit was perfect. He stood, took a step, then another. His eyes widened in disbelief. It doesn't hurt, he shouted, the words bubbling out of him in a laugh. Julian's throat tightened as he watched his son take more steps, faster and steadier with each one. You're incredible, he whispered. The next day at school, Leo couldn't wait to show Anna. He actually ran, across the playground to meet her. Anna's mouth dropped open. You're running, you're really running. He skidded to a stop, breathless and beaming. They lined up near the swings. Ready? Anna called. 1, 2, 3. They took off across the grass. Leo's steps were clumsy at first, but with every stride he grew more confident. He stumbled once, but he caught himself and kept going, Anna's cheers pushing him forward. When they reached the fence, both panting, Leo laughed so hard his cheeks ached. I did it, he gasped. I really did it. Other children clapped, some even cheering. The bullies hung back, their smirks gone. For the first time, Leo wasn't just the boy with one leg. He was the boy who ran. If this story has moved you, please consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter. And tell us in the comments, what was the most powerful moment for you? The story of Leo Vance teaches us that true strength doesn't come from physical perfection, immense wealth, or the absence of scars. It comes from the courage to speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. It comes from the fierce loyalty of a true friend who sees you for who you are, not what you lack. It comes from the love of a parent who is willing to shatter a perfect illusion to save their child. Even when lies and cruelty conspired to keep him small and broken, Leo found his voice, stood up against a monstrous injustice, and rediscovered the whole, powerful person he was all along. His journey is a reminder that healing begins the moment we are truly heard, that a single friendship can be more powerful than a legion of fears, and that the truth, no matter how small its initial whisper, will always, eventually, outshine the darkest of lies.